to our exclusive Meet the Coach night. We are delighted to have with us as our guest tonight, Ohio State men's basketball head coach, Chris Holtmann. I hope you enjoyed that music as much as I did. It sure sounds great to hear the Ohio State marching band with those wonderful tunes. I'm Steve Chapelier, and I'm the president of the Ohio State University Varsity O Alumni Society. We have some of our Varsity O board members with us tonight, and I'd like to introduce them to you. From track and field, past president Katie Craig Swathwood. Hello, Katie. From swimming, our treasurer, Joe Buddy. From football, past president, Ron Masajowski. Hello, Ron. Our board members work very hard to fulfill our mission of athletes helping athletes. Now I saved for the last, for special mention, our board member, Tom Levenick from football. Tom put this program together for us and managed to find this small window in Coach Holtmann's very busy schedule for tonight's program. We build this event as a virtual conversation with Coach Holtmann, and that's exactly what we're looking forward to. This will be a two-way street. Some of you proposed questions when you registered. Thank you for that. We have those questions. You don't need to repeat that process. But others of you who will have questions during the course of the hour, please submit them. There's a place down at the bottom of your screen that you can click to do that, as was mentioned in the opening slide. So please send us your questions. Now let's get to the main event, to Coach Holtmann. This is an audience very familiar with Coach Holtmann, so we won't spend a lot of time with his background. Suffice to say, Coach Chris Holtmann is an outstanding coach, committed to developing young men and allowing them to reach their highest potential, developing young men with great character who we can all be very proud of at Ohio State. Coach, we are so thrilled to have you here as Ohio State's head men's basketball coach, and we are so grateful that you have given us some time to talk with us tonight. Thank you, Coach.
It's great to be on with you, Steve, and great to be with everybody tonight. I'm looking forward to answering some questions and spending a few moments together and talking Buckeye basketball and a shortened season that we had last year and what's to come and all of that.
Thanks, Coach. Would you mind taking a few minutes and just sharing with us an overview of where Ohio State men's basketball is today in July of 2020 and kind of what we're looking ahead to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's I'm really excited about where we're at right now. So as some of you may know, we were allowed to bring our students back to campus it was around mid-June. Our guys had been back to campus, so that includes all of our returning players as well as our new players. And we have some new players. We have a young man that was a transfer from Harvard, graduate from Harvard, Seth Towns, and some other young men that I'll get into. But we've had them back on campus. It's been very different, as you can imagine, with all of the protocol in place. But we're really excited about this group and this team. You know, we're going into our fourth season. We've been fortunate. We've had 3 20-plus win seasons and have been to the tournament every year, and would have been probably a 4, 5, or 6 seed this year, depending on how we played in the Big Ten tournament. And we're playing our best basketball in February and March, but things changed, as we all know, come March for all of us. So, we're in the midst right now of heavy recruiting, to be honest with you. And I can answer questions and get into more detail of that if people have questions. I can't get into specifics, but I can give them an idea kind of what we're doing. But we're excited. Our guys won't be here long. We'll send them back home here in a couple weeks for a few weeks before they return, hopefully for the fall semester.
Great. Great. Let's talk about recruiting for a minute. How do you recruit in an age of COVID-19 and restrictions on travel and social distancing? How is that process working for you?
You know, it's been difficult. I think like anybody, the good thing is, in all this, Steve, right, is everybody's on a level playing field. You don't have, no one's got spectacular Zoom, graphics and presentations that are going to wow a young man. Everybody's pretty much on a level playing field. We can't go and see kids. Kids can't come and see us. So it's really what you're doing right now is developing relationships with people, spending time with guys, a lot of FaceTime, a lot of these kind of interactions. So I've had to say a time or two, hey, you've muted yourself. We can't hear you. I've had to say that to a few families and all the things you go through. Can't hear you. You're on mute. But it's been great. I'm just excited about hopefully getting back to where we can recruit in person, but who knows when that'll happen right now for all athletes. We've, I think it's through the August 31st right now, and I would certainly expect that to go through probably December.
We have a question that's come in from former Buckeye football great, wonderful fullback Vaughn Broadnax, who's a Carmel, Indiana resident. And he's been a fan of yours since your days at Butler. And he wonders how your ties are with Indiana basketball now for recruiting purposes.
Yeah, hey, Vaughn, appreciate the question. Good to hear from you. And I believe that I may have met you a time or two. So thanks for hopping on. Appreciate your question. And, we stay connected, Vaughn, to Indiana as much as possible. As you know, our starting point guard, CJ Walker, is from Indianapolis, Vaughn. He's done a great job for us. He's an Indy kid. And, we really try to stay connected in what we call our recruiting breadbasket, which obviously begins with Ohio, but all the states that touch us. So, I stay connected with coaches and programs over there in Indiana. As you know, Vaughn, it's a great level of high school basketball, really good coaches, high level of play. And, Purdue has been, they've had some outstanding success and runs, Purdue and obviously Butler and Indiana. So it's a school it's a state with a lot of really good programs.
Thanks, Coach. We have a question from former women's basketball great Kristen Watt, who is, of course, part of the voice of the Buckeyes for the women's basketball program. And with all of this going on with COVID-19, she's wondering, how does this affect the program's budget, staffing, travel? What's this going to do?
Yeah, good question. That's a good question, Kristen. I think that, I think the reality is if you're attached to Ohio State, everybody's a college football fan, right? I'm right there with you. I'm as much of a college football fan as you can be, and follow it. And Ryan and I have developed a good relationship, really good relationship. And we're all pulling for a football for a variety of reasons, but obviously it affects the budget of everybody. And obviously, us not playing in the NCAA tournament, we all know the money that's generated from the NCAA tournament for men's basketball. So I think the reality is we'll see how this pandemic continues to affect sports of all kind, but certainly revenue-producing sports. And if it continues to challenge us in ways, then we're all going to have to make, I think, sacrifices. And I don't know what that looks like, because that's something I'm leaning on Gene to guide me about, Gene Smith. He's done an unbelievable job directing us through this. Unbelievable job. But I think it'll change all of us. We've already looked, for those of you that are on here and would have interest, we've looked at ways right now on how we can change and trim some things. Like, can we bus to places maybe we've chartered in the past? So you charter to a place and it's costly, but it's convenient. But now can we bus to some of those places, whether it's a league school or not? I think those are some things where you're looking, can you save chunks of money in your budget? Because that's going to be required, I think, of all of us here as we move forward.
Right. That's going to be an interesting process. That's certainly true. One of the aspects of the recruiting process is what you talk about with the young men and their families. And you've gone on record talking about name, image, and likeness. That's something you're in favor of, athletes being compensated for those things. And next January, the NCAA will be taking that up. Looks like there will be something passed along those lines. So for that next academic year, it looks like that'll be a part of it. And you've mentioned that Columbus, Ohio State, there are some things that you have to offer that you can talk about with these high school players. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you see name, image, and likeness being a part of your recruiting process?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's evolving. For one, it's something that we'll know a lot more about in the coming years. But we're in the midst right now. For example, we talked to a young man yesterday who's certainly one of our top recruits. And while we couldn't get into the specifics in terms of specific dollar figures, we can talk about the reality that for certain young men and young women and athletes that are here, it could be a significant help to them. And I'm all for that. And I think being able to profit off your name, image, and likeness makes sense right now for athletes. And maybe for those in the past that were saying, hey, what about, 10, 15, 20 years ago? Why wasn't this in effect then? The reality is that our college athletics has changed. The economy of college athletics has changed in a significant way and continues to. Now, this pandemic has slowed a lot of that down, but it's certainly changed. But I think it could have a significant impact. Obviously, to be the quarterback at Ohio State on a successful team, that's going to bring certain opportunities. But I also think, for example, we've had a couple walk-ons in the past 4 or 5 years here, 10 years here that had really developed a niche with their fan base. I think they would have been able to earn some opportunities. And certainly some of your more high-profile players that are on national television and your high-profile athletes throughout all of college athletics at Ohio State, there'll be some opportunities. I'm excited about that for our athletes. I really am.
Great. Coach, we have a question from Katie Swathwood, who was a hammer thrower here at Ohio State on the track and field team. She's a member of the OSU Athletics Hall of Fame, and she has a question about leadership and what you think about in terms of teaching leadership to your players, but also to your kids. And are there things that you think about, a motto, words to live by, main elements of leadership that you consider? What are the sorts of things that you think about when you want to instill leadership traits in your student athletes and in your own children?
Yeah, absolutely. Katie, thanks for your question and some incredible accomplishments and really impressive accomplishments. I appreciate your question because it's something as coaches and athletes, right? We think about this a lot. The impact of athletics on a life, the impact of coaches that we've played for and competed for that have been a part of our lives, and how that can fuel young women and young men into successful lives. So For us, we do a few things. For example, one of the things we do is we do something called Beyond Hoops. So Beyond Hoops is a series of really summer classroom type presentations that usually I or someone on our staff, or could be someone from the outside, present to our guys. And it's where we engage with them on things that we think are really important along the lines of our program, but also leadership development. So, you know, for our young people, we're going to talk about some of the program values that we think are important, and they're values like honesty and thankfulness and selflessness and toughness and resiliency and respect. And those are things that you know, so there's 6 that we talk about. We kind of break down, we share video clips from maybe different people talking about them or examples. For example, last week I shared for about 30 minutes on the element of toughness, and what does toughness mean, and why, coach, are you talking about it you know, outside of the season and outside of the confines of a court? The reality is because we all know that grit and toughness determines a lot about young people's future success in whatever they choose to do. And that's an important quality for us as a team and for us as players. But we want our guys to understand that quality translates to their ability to be successful. I shared with them a Harvard study that was years ago, done years ago, and it was where they brought young, I think it was done actually in the 60s. They brought young men from Harvard, and they did a treadmill test for them. And they basically elevated this treadmill and put a certain, they matched up guys relative to kind of size and height and weight and all those things. They brought them all in and they said, hey, we're going to elevate your treadmill. You're going to stay on it. We're going to continue to ramp up all together the pace and the speed. And basically we're going to see, it was an endurance test, who would kind of tap out first. Then they followed those young men for decades. And they had these kind of quantitative measurements for success and overall happiness. And while there's a lot of different variables, what they ended up finding out was the young men that were able to endure and stay on that treadmill a little bit longer ended up having more happier and more successful lives. And so those are kind of some of the examples and the stories that we're sharing. We do a series of about 6 of them. It's called Beyond Hoops. That's one of the things we do.
That sounds like a great program, Beyond Hoops. Does that include anything about financial responsibility, life skills generally, those kinds of things?
It does. It does. That's been something we've added to kind of what we've done. We have added to Beyond Hoops this element of financial responsibility and financial stewardship. And I think it's honestly something we're going to add even more, Steve, because it's more and more relevant, especially as young men have the opportunity in college to earn more money.
Now, we've certainly seen over the last couple of months increased awareness of issues concerning racial justice and equity, and we've had issues concerning people exercising their First Amendment rights. Are those things that you talk about as a team? Is that also part of Beyond Hoops, or is that more one-on-one kind of conversations?
Well, I think, listen, it's a really good question, Steve, because the reality is if you're in a tight-knit team settings, and obviously athletes know this, if you're really going to trust that young woman or young man that you're competing alongside, you got to have real conversation. You got to have real discussions. You got to have discussions about real life stuff. And the news of the day, because it might be sensitive or because there might be differing opinions within that group, I don't think should be ignored. I think it should be something that should be discussed openly. And it's our job as coaches, right, to create an environment where young people feel open to discuss and share an opinion that might be different from their teammates. So we've had discussions around race, and they've been really important, and we've done it really for a couple years, and they've been really important conversations, because men's basketball, the beauty of it is it's such a diverse group, and I love that. And we have had really healthy conversation. And then I think in light of all that's happened here, it's forced us to have even more conversations, listen more. I've tried to listen more, and it's been good. It's been healthy, and I hope it's going to continue. I think it will, and we're going to certainly allow that to continue.
That's terrific. Thanks for doing that. Coach Kristen Watt has another great question, and she knows basketball and she knows recruiting. So here's a recruiting question. She knows that when you are doing recruiting, you can focus on positives, you can focus on some negatives, and there are lots of factors that you take into account. We're in a world sometimes of one and done with the superstars. What do you focus on when recruiting as you try to really hone in on what am I looking for as the best person for the Ohio State basketball program?
A lot of things. I thank you, Kristen, again for the question. I think you're exactly right. There's a lot of things to think about. Can they help you compete for a championship? Can that young person are they talented and gifted enough, to be able to do that? For us, once we've identified a certain pool of people that we're recruiting, and we've identified that their talent and ability are good enough to compete at the highest level of college basketball. And we've been fortunate. Our 3 years here, we've been nationally ranked every year at some point. And 2 of the 3 years, we've been ranked as high as, I believe, top 15 both years. So you're talking about trying to compete every year in this league, the best basketball league in the country, at the highest level of college basketball. So once we've identified that, we're really then trying to define, are they Buckeyes? In other words, do they fit our culture? Are they great teammates? Do we feel like they have the opportunity to grow as people? Do they want to grow as people? How self-aware are they? How do they engage with their coaches? Are they coachable? Are there behavioral things that we should be concerned about? And you don't always get that right because you don't always know for sure. You don't. Sometimes as much as you'd like to know young people, sometimes you don't always get it right. It's an inexact science. Some guys develop a lot quicker than other guys. So there's the evaluation tool in terms of their ability and their talent. And then you're evaluating who they are as people, their intangibles, that question of, are they Buckeyes? Do they fit our program and how we want to operate?
Well, it is a complex process. As a reminder to the audience, please send those questions in. We've been getting great questions. Keep it up. This is terrific. And Coach, you're doing an awesome job with responding to all those questions. Thank you so much. Our organizer extraordinaire, Tom Levenick, has a question kind of combining recruiting and the Beyond Hoops process. And he wonders if that's something you talk about in the recruiting process with parents, family, friends, with the recruit himself. Do you talk about the kinds of things that you do in Beyond Hoops? And that sounds like a great recruiting tool to be able to use.
We do. We do. Thanks, Tom. Thank you for that. Yeah, we do. Now, here's what I think all of us on here would probably be able to guess. In recruiting, who really wants to hear or wants to know more about that when we talk about it? Mom, dad. That's who really wants to know, tell me about this Beyond Hoops. And right, Urban's real life, real world Wednesdays, real life Wednesdays. I think that's really where I got some of I did it some at Butler, but I really tried to adapt it a lot and stole a lot from his ideas. But it's a good question because we absolutely do use it in recruiting. We talk about it, but it's usually the parents who they want to know more. They want to know more.
We have Ron Masajowski, one of our past presidents, former Buckeye quarterback, member of 2 national championship teams back in 1968 and 1970, has a question about the transfer portal. And that throws an interesting wrinkle into your program. And you have some players or maybe their parents who think, gosh, not playing as much as maybe we thought we would play. And so maybe you take what might look like the easy way out. I'm going to use the transfer portal. Yeah. How do you deal with that? And what are your thoughts generally on the transfer portal?
Well, listen, that's the transfer portal's become like this, right? This phrase that everybody hears about. And I heard Izzo from Michigan State, Tom Izzo, a while back, we were on a call and he said, if I hear one more thing about the transfer portal, you know how he can be at times. It was really funny. And I just think it's college basketball used to be probably when a lot of us watched in the 80s, 90s, it used to be stay 4 years. You identified with that program. It's changed, and it's changed. Kids, you had the one and dones, and you had kids leaving, from high school straight to college or straight to the NBA. And then you have guys now that professionalize earlier than they ever have, even if they're not guaranteed to be drafted. And then you have the transfer portal. So it all leads to more player mobility than any of us are used to. And in some cases, it's been an adjustment for all of us. I think the reality is transfers, there's a variety of reasons. It usually comes down to playing time, or they want more of something. That's usually what it comes down to, where, hey, I can't promise that you're going to start because we have this guy in your position, or I can't promise that you're going to get more shots because this is what, we believe. You have 13 guys on scholarship. They can't all get everything they want. So it usually comes down to it's sometimes, it works out, and we benefited certainly from transfers. The reality is when you look at the past couple years of the Final Four, all the Final Four teams have had transfers on them in the past. The past national champions have had a starter in the starting lineup that has been a transfer. That didn't happen 10 years ago. It does now. So the important thing is you got to also, you got to be active. That there could be a year where you lose 1 or 2 guys. That's, I think the norm in college basketball now is almost 45%. So you kind of, you certainly, in some cases it works out, in other cases it doesn't, but you can certainly benefit from transfers as well. I think you just try to have honest conversations with your team as much as anything.
Sure. Coach, let's talk for a minute about mental health of college basketball players today. And if I could, I'm going to set this up by reading back to you something that you said earlier this year. There is nothing more important than in our program than our players' physical, mental health, and overall growth. Nothing. And that will always be the case. There's not a game. There's nothing. Our staff here, our medical staff, this university is comprehensive in its care of our players, physical and mental. Comprehensive. I've never seen anything like it. I think we're on the cutting edge in a lot of ways in terms of our staffing, our willingness to deal with our players' issues. And it's a day and age where we see this more and more, particularly in this age group and particularly with student athletes. So first, Coach, thank you for your strong support of the mental health of our athletes at Ohio State. Can you talk a little bit more about how you and your staff spot issues and help the young men on the program who may need that help?
I can. I'd be more than happy to. I want to read you this statistic here first, if I could, on mental health here. If I can find it, have it written down here. Let's see if I can find it here. I may not have it right now. But the bottom line is that what we see right now in our world is this increasing this increasing issue of mental health with young people, and there are a lot of reasons that you could look at why. But all we know is the growth has been almost exponential when you're talking about mental health. Young people, young men, young women struggling with who look perfect on the outside because they're strong, athletic people, but they're struggling with significant depression and anxiety. And we also know that social media has an impact. It's been proven. Social media directly impacts the mental health of young people in a negative way. So what we've tried to do is educate our young people as much as possible and provide them a safe environment where they can discuss mental health. Everyone knows, or most people know, we had a really talented young player, DJ Carton, who was open and honest about his mental health struggles. And they were real, and they are real. And we wish him well in his continued growth and progress towards getting completely healthy. And I really believe he will. And we are a huge advocate for him in that process. We've had other young people who struggle along those lines, and we've just had to have very honest conversations. But I think you're right. You pull some of the stigma away from it. When some of us played, we didn't want to go into our coach and talk about and say we were depressed. Hey, I need to see that. Can I see such and such, our counselor on staff, one of our counselors on staff? We didn't want to talk about that. I didn't have that when I played in college. My counselor was my coach, and that didn't always go so well. So, and I love him. He was my mentor, but it was a different day and age. So I just think we want to destigmatize it as much as we can and be open and honest about the conversation. Thank you for your question.
You mentioned that earlier that you've had more players utilize mental health services over the last 5 years than in the previous 15 years of your coaching. And that just goes to what you're saying, that for a whole variety of reasons that's happening. And so you work with Dr. Jamie Huell, former Buckeye gymnast in the sports psychology area, and the staff there to get those people in there and get those counseling sessions that they need.
We do, and they're good. They've been really helpful. We absolutely do, and we get that. I don't know always when our players are going to see Jamie and other people. I don't, and that's fine. I think that's kind of set up that way, right?
Right.
But we absolutely do. They take full advantage. We encourage it, and it's not like it's your whole team, but I think there's always going to be. It's like what I said is true. I've seen more in the last 5-6 years than in the previous 15.
Yeah. Well, it's a challenge, and we're fortunate to have at Ohio State the staff that we have to help you with that.
Outstanding.
We have a question from Ryan Grubel, who is a former women's basketball manager, and he has a question about the role of the manager in your program. Can you talk about that, how you utilize managers, and how it could be that managers go from working with support staff and working on breaking down video, and then some of those people hope to become coaches?
Yeah, a lot of them do, Ryan. It's a good question, because as a former manager how valuable your role was. You did a lot of work that no one else wanted to do, quite honestly, and that's true with our managers. They're the best. Our managers are the best. Our program would fall apart in a lot of ways without managers, without really good ones. I think that's true of a lot of programs. During the season, they do all the stuff behind the scenes that you just take for granted. And most of them want to be coaches, as you mentioned, and we try to do as much as we can to help them. As a matter of fact, I just called a head coach from another program, another Division I program, about one of our managers, one of our graduating managers. He wants to coach. So I called him, and hopefully he'll get a GA spot. Most of those guys want to go from being a manager to a graduate assistant to potentially coaching on the floor. That's a long, arduous journey, as we all know, but that most of them want to do that. And if they have paid their dues, like our guys this year were phenomenal, our managerial group, if they paid their dues, we want to do everything we can to assist that.
Great. Thank you. I've got a two-part question for you about the impact of fans during basketball games. So the first one has to do with the fact that a few years back, the university made a decision to bring the students down closer to the floor. And now we have the nut house with students right behind you, up on their feet all game. And so part one of the question is, how do the players and you as coaches feel about having those students there? And maybe think about how that same scenario plays out in other Big Ten arenas. And then the second part of the question is, depending on how things look in this coming season, we may not have fans in there. And how do you think that's going to affect the players and the coaching during games with either reduced or no fans?
Yeah, really good questions. I love the moving of our students, and I love the fact that our students are on top of us and on top of kind of behind both benches. And we all know that one of the things about the shot is it's so massive that to create a really significant home court advantage, you need the energy you need. It's really important that you have engaged fans. And it's important that we're putting a product out there that people want to get behind. But I think there are tremendous environments in the Big Ten. I mean, tremendous. Our first year we played at Purdue, sold out. There were 300 students waiting an hour and a half before tip, a line coming out. The bus pulls up. We see the long line of 300 students, because you got to walk right by their student entrance for tickets. So we had an option. We had an opportunity to hear just a lot of really nice things that those students say to us. Just really encouraging words as we were entering the arena. So,
I'm sure.
Yeah. Earmuffs, if my daughter we'd go earmuffs. So I think the reality is their environment's incredible. It's incredible. There's students and everything. They're right on top. The way the building is structured, it's just like this. They don't lose there much. Now, they lost a few times there this year, but they don't lose at home much. We're fortunate we didn't lose at home much this year. We had incredible crowds. When you look at Illinois on senior day, basically sold out. Michigan, sold out. Maryland, sold out. Now you're talking 19,000 plus. We have one of the biggest arenas in the country. Our Villanova game sold out. Cincinnati was close to a sellout. So I think I love the fact that the fans are on top of us. I think that without fans, and I've talked to people in the NBA, there will have to be some creative things done. I've even heard about Zoom video kind of boards being placed in seats, or, there'll be some things that are done to try to create some type of home environment and road environment would be my guess. And I think they'll be in concert with probably TV on that.
Thank you. I should give credit to Ann Frayne, who was a swimmer here at Ohio State, for that question about what it's going to look like in a COVID-19 basketball arena.
You'll hear, I think it's a really good question, Ann, because you'll hear a lot more. There'll be a lot of more, you'll hear probably more coaching. And I think it'll be eerie in a lot of ways for us as coaches and players. But wouldn't we sign up for that? Wouldn't we all sign up right now to go to Ohio Stadium and be able to watch some guys, watch our guys play, or go over to the soccer field and watch the women play this fall? And we'd sign up for that right now without fans. I think we'd all want that.
Sure. Folks, keep bringing those questions in. These have been terrific questions. Coach, you have a number of new players, some new faces that those of us who follow the program don't know a whole lot about. Can you share some of the stories of your incoming personnel?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll begin with our two freshmen to just talk about them first. We have Gene Brown and Zed Key. Eugene Brown is from Atlanta, 6'6" wing, a really 6'9" wingspan, gifted scorer. He was a top 125, top 100 recruit in a lot of different outlets. Zed Key is a 6'8", 245-pound forward big that is going to provide interior depth for us. Those are two freshmen. We have a young man from Bucknell that's going to be sitting out, Jimmy Sotos. He'll be sitting out this year. We have a young man, Abel Porter, who is a little bit unique because he went on a Mormon mission right out of high school. So he's an older, and he also redshirted a year. So he's pretty old now. I think he's 24 and he's married and has a daughter on the way. So you want to talk about a different point in his life than our young fellows coming in. He's a tremendous kid. We brought him in because we were looking for depth in the backcourt behind CJ Walker and Dwayne Washington and our returning guards. And then, as many of you know, Seth Towns. Seth Towns is a young man that has had some injuries. Had some injuries at Harvard, but was Ivy League Player of the Year as a sophomore. A Columbus young man, gifted player. The biggest thing for him is going to be getting healthy. If he gets healthy, which we believe he will, then I'm really excited about the contribution that he can make. He's got 2 years in our program because he only played 2 years at Harvard. And then also we've had a young man in our program, Justice Suing, who is a 6'6" wing from California, Cal, and transferred in. He has 2 years. He actually broke a bone in his foot, but he'll be fully healthy. Really excited about him. Was Cal's leading scorer and rebounder.
Coach, there are some lawyers on this call, and we lawyers are very excited about a player named Justice Suing, which may be one of the all-time great college basketball names, and we're hoping that after he finishes playing basketball, he'll go to the OSU Moritz College of Law. Seems like a natural.
It does. And you know what? He's a smart enough kid. He could probably do that. I understand based on friends and people I've talked to, it's not real easy to get through law school. But he has the acumen to be able to do that. He's a good student, great kid. And I think someone that people are going to enjoy watching. Justice Suing was with us all year last year from Hawaii. So he's got that laid back kind of Hawaii vibe, a great kid. I think our people are going to really enjoy getting to know him.
Well, this was a good year for Buckeye basketball players and academics generally. You had Kyle Young and Musa Jallo, members of the NABC Honors Court. You had Danny Hummer, who was a Big Ten Distinguished Scholar. You had, and you had to have a 3.7 to get that. And then you had 4 Buckeyes named both academic All Big Ten and Ohio State Scholar athletes. So a great year in the classroom for your basketball players. All right, extra time at the study table, or what are you doing there to get these people, get these grades up?
You know, we've had really good kids. That one of the things when we're recruiting that we say we look for is young people who are interested in pursuing their degree. Quite. It seems simple, right? You're not going to recruit somebody who doesn't. But in the reality, in our world, there are some young men who just aren't interested in going to school. And that's fine. They want to get directly to the NBA. It's probably not someone that, not in every case, but we're looking for guys that are at least going to be interested in getting their degree and interested in education. And we've Musa, Kyle, Danny, Harrison, some of the guys you've mentioned, they're really committed students. And with the addition of a Harvard grad now with Seth Towns, right? He that brings a whole nother level of kind of academic pedigree. Normally you worry when you bring in a graduate transfer, you worry if they're going to be admitted into the graduate program. It's an extensive process to get admitted into the graduate program at Ohio State. And they normally call you and they say, Coach, listen, I think we can get him in, but we're not sure. Time will tell. I didn't hear that with Seth. I didn't get those calls. So we I think that the Harvard degree speaks for itself, I think.
That helps, I'm sure.
Yes.
Coach, have a question about any programs that you have in place for your alumni, for former Buckeye basketball players to stay involved with the program, to help out in some way, obviously recognizing compliance issues, and we always worry about those things with former student athletes, but are there ways that you try to keep alumni involved in your program?
Absolutely. So important, and particularly in a place where we've had tremendous alumni, right? And everyone knows who've watched Aaron Kraft and Evan Turner and some of those names, but you go on down the line with a number of tremendous alumni throughout the last several decades, and obviously all the way back to the 60s in our national championship team. We have a former players dinner in the fall every year where we bring in all the former players that want to come, provide a meal and a dinner, and they sit with their teammates and they have a great time. And we have a bit of a program that we present to them. And then I think, they go out and they kind of enjoy themselves a little more in Columbus. It's a great evening. It's a former Buckeye players dinner that we do. It's every player and every manager that's been a part of our program that has stayed and been a part of our program. So we do that. We also have a captain's dinner for former captains. That's during the season. This year it was before our Illinois game, the night before Illinois game. We do those two things.
Great. Well, speaking of alumni, great news came out today that Michael Redd is going to be the commencement speaker for the university here on August 9. And he will become the second former Buckeye basketball player, Clark Kellogg being the other, to speak to a university graduation. And that obviously speaks very well for Michael and his wonderful accomplishments through three-time MVP, gold medal winner, all-star in the NBA, and a great Buckeye. So he will be here on campus August 9, showing the Buckeye colors proud.
Michael's tremendous. For those that may or may not know Michael Redd, he is a high-level person, incredible person, and he was a phenomenal athlete. Played here 3 years, was a second-round draft pick, and ended up being an NBA All-Star and on the Olympic team. That is not as easy as it sounds. Tremendous. I'm happy for him. He'll do a great job with that.
Yep. We have a question from Chris Hill from the fencing program about scholar athlete recognition. And there's a general scholar athlete recognition through the entire university. But Chris's question is more to within the basketball program. Is there a formal student athlete recognition program and if so, what are the things that you measure beyond an ACUM? Are there other things outside of basketball achievements or other things that you as a basketball program look at?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks for your question, Chris. We do not at this time have a kind of an end of the year. We would typically do something like that in an end of the year formal ceremony. In the past, I've been a part of programs some of which have done it, where you invite parents, but it's difficult at times to get families and parents together in those moments. I have thought about putting something together that would honor those guys. We do something within our team at the end of every semester, just as a group, where we award our players, and we're allowed within NCAA rules to award our players for something for academic achievement. So we do that just within our team, and it's usually things that they like we're allowed to give within rules to give gift cards for a certain degree of academic accomplishment, and we do that. But as far as a formal award ceremony, we have not done that yet.
In terms of people that you have looked up to in your early days as a coach or today, are there coaches, college basketball coaches, that you've seen as role models, heroes, inspirations that you think about and take something from this coach or that coach?
I think for me, it's not just confined to basketball. I think there are guys that I look, if you were to look at my library or on my bookshelves, you'd see a variety, whether it's coaches from different sports, both men's and women's. But there are guys that I lean on when I'm going through something difficult, that I pick their brain. It begins for me with my former college coach, Paul Patterson, an NAIA Hall of Fame coach. He's now away from it and getting a little older, but he's someone that I've always really valued. Brad Stevens is a close friend. Brad coached at Butler, then went on to the Boston Celtics, where he's had a very successful run. And then guys that I just respect. I have a close friend at Akron, John Gross. Mark Few at Gonzaga is a guy that I'll pick up the phone and call. Jay Wright, who's won a couple national championships. Ed Cooley's a guy I spent time with at Providence in the Big East. So there's a lot of guys that I'll kind of pick their brain, that I respect how they do things. And they're a good sounding board when you're kind of like banging your head against the wall in the middle of the season, trying to figure out how to maybe get to your team at a higher level.
Great. You've been around the Big Ten several years now and seen a lot of facilities. How do you like the facilities at Ohio State? How do they compare? What's good, what's bad?
I think in general, our facilities, there are some things that are I think, top notch. Our practice facility is phenomenal. Recently done. Our weight room is really good. It's probably needs to be a little bit bigger, but it's really good. We renovated our hallway that's outside of our practice gym and in our weight room in the last after year one, and that's a phenomenal look to it that leads down to the hallway. We are in the process of continuing to upgrade our locker room and a place where our players eat and the lounge area. Those are things that always have to be addressed, because the reality is in our league in the Big Ten, if you're not moving forward in terms of being progressive, then you're going to fall behind really quickly. People are highly invested in men's basketball in the Big Ten. So I think the Schottenstein Center, there's a lot I like about it. I think there are some things that we need to do to continue to improve it as a basketball facility and a basketball environment. And those are things that I'm constantly talking, with Gene about. I think probably before long we need to look at a new scoreboard. Ours is a little bit dated right now. So we really need, there's some things we need to address. But there's a lot to really feel good about too, with in terms of facilities.
Great. Coach, we want to be respectful of your time, of course. So why don't I give you a minute here if you'd like to wrap up, and any closing remarks you might have for the Varsity O group?
Well, listen, I would just tell all of you, thank you for everything you guys do, and thank you for supporting and helping with all of our programs. And I know that I can certainly speak for men's basketball, but I know all of our sports, and just to tell you how much we appreciate it. I love the fact that you guys are invested in Ohio State athletics and have an interest in what we're doing, what our program is doing. I'm super excited about it. And I trust that everybody is healthy and well, and that their families are healthy and well and have not been impacted in any negative way by COVID. And I hope that continues to be the case for all of you. And we wish you well. Before long, we're all going to be singing that fight song together in some arena or field in the very near future. I really believe that.
That's great. I have 3 quick thank yous. First, to you, Coach Holtmann. Thank you so much for your time tonight, for your candor, for answering every single question we threw at you. That was very kind of you, and we appreciate it very much. So thank you. My second thank you is to the Ohio State University Alumni Association staff, who are responsible for the very professional look of this. To the extent that this looks good at all, we thank you, Alumni Association staff. Thank you for organizing this, sending out the notices, getting everything set up with Zoom. That's been terrific. And my final thank you is to the Varsity O members who are a part of this. First, thank you for participating. Second, for submitting questions. They were fantastic questions, just awesome. And thank you so much for continuing to support Varsity O and its mission of athletes helping athletes. It means a lot, and we're very grateful for your continued support. Thank you, everyone. Stay healthy and safe. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.